The 80s and 90s really saw an intense rise in the video game industry, largely in part due to the Nintendo Home Entertainment System being released in 1985. This was the birth of so many legendary franchises that are mostly still being made today, some surprisingly so, and some we question why we haven't gotten a new game in the series. But regardless, the 90s and early 2000s specifically were an interesting time as we transitioned from 2D gaming to the third dimension. Some games that made this transition were so well thought out, filled with love, and are regarded as the greatest of all time. And some, not so much. Today I want to talk about 4 popular game series that thrived in 2D, and when thrown into a 3D space, absolutely floundered like a Magikarp on land that can't even use Splash, and maybe provide my 2 cents on what they could have done to fix it. I'm going to start this list with the first game transitioning to 3D I had high hopes for, but this stunk stinky poo-poo garbage, and if you like it, please tell me why, as this was a huge disappointment to me. Sonic 3D Blast. I loved Sonic so much growing up, and if you ever watched my channel, you'd probably get that from the stories of the springtime of my youth. But that didn't stop me from not being a fan of 3D Blast. I remember getting it personally way later on PC when Sega released a Sonic collection on CD-ROM for Windows. This is the only game of the bunch I did not play through all the way. I thought it arguably looked the coolest, sort of having an isometric Mario RPG look, and the fact that Sonic could move in any direction was freeing! Until you'd be moving fast and hit a wall just as quickly stopping all momentum. The game really didn't focus on speed so much as collecting flickies from around the level and transporting them to this big ring. Riveting. This game actually was developed by Traveler's Tales as the Sonic team was busy working on Nights into Dreams, and then subsequently the cancelled Sonic X-treme. This was meant to be a swan song to the Genesis before focus really ramped up on the Saturn. Then it ended up being re-released on the Saturn because they had no Sonic games. Traveler's Tales clearly were influenced by pre-rendered graphical styles like in Donkey Kong to make things really pop. Also drawing inspiration for the gameplay style from a previously released Game Gear title, Sonic Labyrinth. Let's be real here, the core issues of this title are not the graphics or the music, it's purely the gameplay. It's slow-paced, which doesn't fit Sonic. If you were to make a title like this and wanting to break the mold, you'd have to completely revamp the concept. Not try to keep gameplay elements of the original, they just weren't meant to be used in this space. Let's take another look at Mario RPG and the changes they made since those are so similar looking. Mario World is the previous release and is a classic 2D Mario bouncing around and moving quickly with tight platforming. Mario RPG is a turn-based strategy game that has a Mario code on top of it. Honestly, looking back at Sonic, it may have been cooler if they experimented more with the bonus level concept. They had a good variety and interesting ideas. It's almost turning into a Robo Blast concept in my head. I know 3D was complicated and limited on Genesis, but this did also release on the Saturn. But limiting us to the Genesis hardware and the concept of this game, how could it be fixed? One thing to immediately help would be to zoom the camera out a bit more, giving us a bit more to see. It would help dramatically with incoming enemies or walls. 2. Limit the scope of the level as far as how wide and open some parts are. We need a consistent path and view, and it would be nice to be able to move forward at high speed. Only introduce those wide areas when it's a boss fight. This especially would help because we don't have some sort of mini-map and we're floundering around looking for things. This also slows the gameplay, which is not ideal. And 3. Allow us to leap over gaps. This sounds silly and has risk, but the walls and ledges were able to be leapt over and you could access other areas quicker. This would help speed things up and add more elements of skill to beating it quickly. And 4, why not let us play as other characters with unique abilities? Tails being able to get height by flying and Knuckles scaling walls would be very welcome additions and could give some more puzzle elements. Overall, without totally revamping the gameplay, those are some basic enhancements I personally think would help this game be more enjoyable. And oh yeah, joystick, but I'm just talking on the Genesis hardware itself. Let's move on to another franchise that I loved, Earthworm Jim. Arguably one of the greatest 2D games of the 90s, Earthworm Jim had it all. Incredible graphics, over-the-top hijinks, a ray gun to blast evil. This series was phenomenal, and in my opinion, Earthworm Jim 2 is the best in the series with fantastic gameplay variety and level design. So it was expected when new 3D hardware came out, oh, Jim is going to be all over that. And sort of. The game was developed by Viz Interactive and published by Rockstar. Yeah, that Rockstar. I'll be honest with you guys, going back and replaying it, I don't feel like it's that deserving of hate. The controls are solid, and although people complained about the camera, it's not much different than most 3D games at the time that are praised. And all of Jim's arsenal is basically here with the exception of being able to use snot. which actually probably would have been welcome for platforming sections. But he does have a little copter move. I believe the real issue here is the game went through development heck, and the level design suffered the most. It's got a lot of big open worlds that aren't filled with too much. You'll enter a big area with a few things you'll need to climb up, and maybe like 3 enemies and some marbles to get. But there's a lot of open, empty space. That's not to say they're all equally bad, but a lot of these levels suffer from being half-baked, and it's painfully obvious. Going from the densely packed 2D levels of Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, it really shows a dramatic difference. I really believe that the 3D team could have just another 6 months to let this bake. I think it would have been much better received. The levels just need to be more dense and filled with not only collectibles, but interesting things to do. The fear levels like Poultrygeist are an example of a world that feels more fleshed out. Lots of rooms with crazy looking layouts and enemies. Every corner had something interesting. I actually think one of the worst offenders is the first level Coup d'etat. Very open and empty, which, as it's the very first level in the game, is really a bummer. Most probably stopped before even getting past it. Another setback is the boss fights, as they are collect marble minigames as you ride on top of a pig like a surfboard. Terrible idea. It'd be okay if it was one of the boss fights and they all changed, but nope, it's all of them. It takes all the thrill out of the bosses and their unique designs because they're basically all the same. I really wish they gave us proper fights. I think this game had a lot of potential, and it unfortunately just fell flat in development heck. It's a real shame. Let's move on to a series I can't believe is making a resurgence in the year of our Lord 2026, Bubsy. Released in 1993 by Accolade, is a side-scrolling platformer. Of course, with a bobcat mascot. The game focuses on you collecting yarn, and the gameplay emphasizes jumping, and this sort of glidey move? I don't know. And you move relatively fast. One thing I'd highlight here is the graphics. They weren't cutting edge, but the world was colorful, vibrant, and fun. Now fast forward to its 3D entry, Bubsy 3D. At least the world is colorful? To say they did the bare minimum feels like an understatement. The same console that gave us Crash Bandicoot also gave us this steaming pile. Picture a 3D platformer with tank controls. Okay, so now you're thinking Croc. Except Croc worked better. Imagine every time you try to slightly turn to adjust your position, you hop backwards, and the platforming is so unforgiving you may fall. And of course you have to be jumping on these tight little square platforms in the middle of the air. Take the concept of a 3D platformer, make it crappier, and that's Bubsy 3D. The camera swings all over the place. You get stunned when you're hit. To attack, you actually have to stop and line up a shot with items that are collectibles. It's just so many bad decisions over and over and over. And the world, although I jokingly said is colorful, it's basically unfinished, untextured polygons. This is something more in line with creating a demo and testing out features, but it's the whole game. I mean, the glide itself barely even does anything at all too, which is such a shame because this could have been cool in 3D. I'd really highlight what I would do to improve, but they honestly re-released this and updated the gameplay. Even with the fixed controls, they'd need to redo the entire world and level design. There isn't much in the way of making this better without a total rehaul, and at that point, it needs to be a new game. But if I was going to change anything, I would give Bubsy some basic attacks. I would of course try to fix the tank controls and make it more of a standard platformer control. And the biggest thing, when you jump, I wouldn't have the camera zoom in and move above you. I understand that this was made to sort of help you jump and land on platforms, but just give us a shadow like they did in Mario 64. It works way better. Don't be rotating my camera. Give me control over the camera. Don't touch my camera. It's mine. Contra. The popular NES series made its way through console generations and up onto the PlayStation 1 with Legacy of War, the first 3D entry. The original Contra games were run and gun with tight platforming and fun shooter mechanics, and they could be challenging, but a lot of those games were back in the day. The main draw is getting weapons and blasting away. So what could be better than that? I know. Let's put it in 3D. Konami's behind this series, so you just immediately think quality, and to be honest, conceptually this game is pretty sound. Well, except for the fact that there was no sound when I got into the level. It's the opposite of sound. It's silence. We're only greeted with the noise of us shooting or yelling when we get hit, which I didn't even realize until I started moving. Where's the music? There was music in the menu. That was cool. Anyways, they wanted to go for one of those over-the-top twin-stick shooters, but this was pre-twin stick, so you just kind of shoot in a direction and move around. Your shots move with you. Sometimes it'll auto-aim up or whatever, but I found the controls to be really the biggest flaw in this game. Since they require you to shoot specific areas of a wall or something, you'll be constantly jumping and trying to hit it, looking stupid. The visuals themselves in the game actually look decent with this 3D effect. And when I was in the menu, I saw that there was an option for a 3D effect, and I thought, oh dang, more 3D? More 3D equals more better. What does this do? Change my perspective? Nope. It turns everything red and blue like those goofy 3D red and blue glasses back in the day. You know, the kind you went to watch Spy Kids 3D with? What a weird choice to have this in a game. Overall, I can't complain too much about this game because honestly, I didn't even get that far. Even on easy, this game is hard as heck. If we had twin sticks though, you could aim a lot better and it probably would have been looked upon more fondly because there's a lot going on here that's kind of cool. I mean, the weapons, those are sick, the graphics, they're really nice. But if they just fixed that flippin' music and added twin stick controls, I think this game would have been, maybe, potentially, a banger. These are just a few of some of the most popular game series that tried their hand at 3D going from 2D that I had played. Are there any others that you remember that you think are absolute stinkers? Let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, that's all I have for you. Please drop a like to help spread my videos and hit subscribe so you don't miss a future upload. Until next time, have a good one.